What is going on, everybody? Today's video, we're just going to get into some odds and ends on the GT350. Where I left off on the very last video on the GT350, I teased a handful of things. You can see seat is out. We ended up going with a Saybelt. It's called an X-Pad. So now I have a proper, racing seat. Right now it's on slides because I don't have a quick release. It'll just make it a little easier getting in and out. When I turn this into a real race car and I solidly mount the seat, I can kind of, figure that out later. Obviously harnesses and stuff to go with it. I got the S550 specific bracket, so everything was kind of more or less just a bolt-in operation there. This I'm pretty excited about is our carbon fiber GT350 under tray. Thing looks super nice. The main reason I made it is because I'm fairly confident that that could fairly easily be adapted to any S550 Mustang. And then along with our splitter blade, which would be this guy right here, you would then only really need to fill the gap from the blade to your bumper, and then you have a pretty good front splitter setup that we actually have wind tunnel data on, so we know it'll produce pretty decent downforce. So we'll be installing that. And then last but not least, splitter side plates are done. So we'll put them on. Again, another wind tunnel tested part that we finally turned into carbon. This guy, our brake deflectors. Original one is there. Original, not OEM, but some other one that was on the car when I got it. And as you can see, we kind of have it installed on this side. And this little scoop right here, if you kind of look from the top, it's a little hard to see from this angle, kind of shoots air much more towards the rotor hat than just a flat piece of just a flat piece of sheet metal. So yeah, we think these should be pretty cool. I want to get them on track and test them. They're not that close to anything like hot or anything, so I'm fairly confident they'll be fine, especially because it's not on, but our airbox lids sit right here with all the engine heat and everything, and they're fine. So anyways, we're just gonna kind of install a handful of things. I did sign up for a track day. I'm gonna be doing one day in this car, hooked on driving at VIR, and one day in the race car. So I'm gonna be getting on that. That thing hasn't been out since October last year, so let's just see kind of what we get into. All right, so first thing we're going to tackle is getting our new under tray mounted. We're going to have to change up a few bits of hardware. You can see the only real change from this to an OEM one, which is right there, is this mounting point and this mounting point on the factory one are like 2 inches deep. So like laying carbon over something that deep would be darn near impossible. So when we made the mold, we did shorten them. So we do have a standoff, but that means we need longer hardware, different hardware. We need a different, mounting method. So if we slide underneath of the car, I did it in a few spots. You can see I already put a nutsert. And if you're not sure what a nutsert is, it's this little thing right here. And when you put it on this little plier type thing and you squeeze it, it ends up just like squishing out almost exactly like a rivet. And then there's threads inside of it. So we definitely need to do this one, which I already did previously, because when the previous owner crashed the car and it ripped the splitter off, those little tiny, let's see if I have any left. Oh, here's an example. These little tiny like coarse thread clip screw things kind of suck, and you can see how this one's already halfway pulled out. So we're just going to replace all of these with nutserts. I'm going to do this one right here just as an example. Because this square is so big, I really didn't have to drill much out. But it is enough just for these to be able to go in. And when you want to screw this on, you want to make sure you have a couple threads poking out. And this is a steel nutsert. They make them in aluminum, all different sizes, different lengths if you're squeezing like a thicker metal as well. So you can get whatever you need. Now the steel ones, an M6 with this little set of pliers. Oy. Holy crap. All right. There we go. All right. I had to squeeze it pretty freaking hard. Okay. All right, so there you go. Nutsert installed. I'll put a link to this tool in the video description below. All right, so with all of our new nutserts in, oh, by the way, I'm sure people will ask, this specific one is about 6.5 pounds, so a couple pounds lighter than factory. But in all honesty, the factory one isn't too heavy. So I got some M6 hardware to start with. It does have that little tab all the way in the front here to hold itself. I guess I'll just pick one to start on. I would be extremely surprised if all these holes line up perfectly. Because I drilled them out to 1/4 inch, and an M6 is just about 1/4 inch. So if I do have to enlarge it any, it'll only be like going up to a 5/16 hole. So it shouldn't be much at all, if anything. Oh, this one lines up good. Okay. How many bolts? There's a ton of bolts in this thing. I got the 2 in the back. Oh, alright, got that one too. Alright, so they're all the ones that go without any spacers. Like I mentioned earlier, we need to put the spacers in these guys. And the spacers are these guys right here. Right now I made them out of aluminum. I could make these smaller. I don't know what I'm gonna do if I ever end up turning these into a production thing. But these, for example, like I was mentioning, the factory one, you can see how deep this mounting hole is. So on the back side of ours, we don't have all of this. So I think with this, I think this is going to be this one. But anyway, so you can see how it's going to go from ours. So that way it bolts and everything will be at the exact same distance. You know, ground height, ground clearance, because these are all measured out to, like, you know, a couple thousandths of an inch. My smart self, don't know why I got hex head when the rest are Allen head. And I also, don't ask me why, a lot of time, sometimes when you're on McMaster looking for hardware and you just find the thread and length and everything you need, and you just order and you don't realize you get the, I think it's like a black phosphate or something rather than like a zinc coated one. Whatever. I'll get the splitter on. I'll worry about this later. So you can kind of sneak your arm in through the side. Alright, so I did have to play with a few holes, but all honestly, really nothing too bad. So now we just gotta tighten it up. Alright. So they're bolted up just like factory. We'll use factory hardware along this leading edge and under trays on. Oh, we need the oil filter door. So for the oil filter door, we actually did a video making the mold and this part right here. So if you're into more of the composite stuff, I'll put a tag right up here if you kind of want to watch us making the mold to make this part. But yeah, oil filter door can go on too. All right, so J-clip goes on. Oil filter door, just like OEM, pops up there and gets tightened down. All right, and here it is, all finished, bolted up. We did the ones along the front bumper. All we have to do is slide these J-clips from the factory splitter into all of these holes, and we'll be good to go to put our splitter back on. Now for the splitter, we just have the factory GT350R lip. And then our splitter extension. If you want to see me installing the splitter in more detail, I'll put a tag of that video right up here. But otherwise, we're just bolting everything right back on. All right, so as you can see, our splitter is on. we're working on the last few clips inside the fender liner, and you can see how our new splitter, tunnel, our new splitter under tray has these tabs built in that accept the factory clips. But those factory clips, they just kind of hold a little bit, and you can see how much movement there still is. So what we're going to do is pop those out. And what we're going to do is put one of these little J-clips, on the backside, so that way we can actually use a physical screw to hold it tightly. So go ahead and just slide that little J-clip on right there. Alright, so there you go. Got actual screws in there now. So now the trailing edge of this under tray is just a little bit stiffer. And then while we're in here, we're gonna install our air curtain blockers. Funny enough, this was a piece we tested in the wind tunnel as well. So putting that in, and we're about finished up on the front end. All right, so now that the front end and splitter is all buttoned up, really quickly, we're gonna go ahead and do our new brake deflector. Installing these is pretty simple. We're just gonna take the old one off. I'm gonna try and confirm what cars and what control arms are threaded. Right now, I think the performance pack cars, because they came with a little tiny plastic factory thing, come threaded. I believe the GT350s are not threaded, so you can either tap them like the previous owner did on my car here, or you can use like an M5 that would just go through the hole, and you could nut and bolt it at that point. So easy enough option. I'll figure out exactly what needs to be done, so that way we can kind of provide them with the correct hardware. And just so you can see the difference, you can see ours are a little bit larger than whatever brand this is. I honestly don't know. The factory performance pack ones are even smaller than this, so we do increase the size a little bit, but the main advantage is, as you can see, this little bit of a ramp right here, which when installed, it just allows more air to kind of get into the rotor of the hat, rather than just running along the angle of the control arm, and just hitting kind of almost nothingness, if you will. And then to reinstall, obviously, it's just as simple as the 3 screws. If we come straight in under the car, air will kind of hit the front tunnel here, kind of go up, catch our brake deflector, and that little ramp might be a little hard to get the angle, but you can see how it'll kind of shoot air a little bit more towards the center of the rotor rather than just back towards the hub or whatever. This little front angle here, you can see how it'll kind of like catch air just a little bit better. So at this immediate minute, we do not have data on these. Once we get onto track, we will most likely do like a A/B test on them, or like a left side, right side with some heat paint, or those temperature sticker things or whatever. We'll do that. Anybody who's familiar with us, we go to the wind. This car has been in the wind tunnel twice now. We have a handful of new things we want to test on this. One of the things we'll probably test in the wind tunnel will be the brake ducts, because in theory they should cause a little less disturbance to the air through the wheel well and everything. Might be a little less draggy than just like a giant flat one or something, but right at this minute, it's kind of an educated guess more than actually having data for you right now. All right, guys, so we're humming right along. At this point, we want to finish up what will be our last aerodynamic addition for this video, which is our splitter side plates. As you can see, I'm just going to do this real rough for demonstration purposes. Whoops. Go about like that on, we call that piece the tire deflector, because that'll kind of deflect air from hitting the tire. And then the side plate, as you can see, just lines up real nicely with the side of the splitter. Now, this is where things get a little bit interesting. We have wind tunnel data of canards, side plates, canards with side plates, upper canard with side plate, canards with tire blocker, which is this piece right here I pulled out. This is actually the exact piece that we tested in the wind tunnel, and it kind of goes something like that. So you can see from the front of the car, It just blocks everything that would kind of hit the tire, hence tire blocker. So we actually have data of, it gets to the point where even I have the ability to look at our spreadsheet, our data, and let's say if someone were to come to me and say, hey, you know, what setup is best? And the answer isn't really that easy, because it's what are you trying to achieve with the car? Sometimes you got rules to work around. You may not be allowed to do anything, so that's kind of, you know, easy answer there. Also a little bit track dependent. You know, you're going to like Lime Rock or something, throw as much downforce on the car as possible. A couple years ago, Nationals were at Daytona. You know, you would probably want to do something along the lines of like pull everything off, trim the wing out a little bit, and you know, you could easily drop 30-40 pounds of drag, because somewhere like Daytona, drag is usually a little bit more of a premium. So after like really diving back into it, like I mentioned, I'm going to run canards with our side plates. They're both options that you can add to your splitter if you get the splitter, or you can just get them individually and add them later, either or. The reason I'm going to do that, one, it's, believe it or not, the canards with the tire blocker was actually the most downforce we saw in the wind tunnel. Problem is, it was also the most drag, which made it, or the most drag according to these few setups I'm referencing at the moment. I gotta be kind of clear on all that stuff. Our canards and tire blocker setup was not quite the most efficient. It was only about like 1 point off of, it was only about 1 point less efficient than the side plate and tire deflector by themselves, but it wasn't as much total downforce. And that's something I see people get confused with all the time. A lot of people think the most efficient setup is always the highest downforce, which is not the case. For example, let's say we make a change that adds 10 pounds of downforce and only 1 pound of drag. Okay, that's a 10-to-1, you know, ratio. That's a pretty efficient change, pretty good, but it's really only 10 pounds. Let's say we do a change, let's say we make a change that adds 100 pounds of downforce. Let's do some easy math, and it's a 5-to-1 ratio. That means it adds 20 pounds of drag. So, okay, drag is worse, but total downforce is better. Yeah, but total downforce is better. I hope that all kind of makes sense. It's a lot to kind of keep track of. But anyways, after pouring over my data, for the most part, I'm gonna run canards and our side plate option, which I already installed on this side. You can see I just riveted it right to the splitter. Plenty sturdy. What's nice about that is no hardware goes through the bottom, and as you can see, we are getting some scraping here, even with our scuff plate. Our scuff plate's kind of worn down, so we need a new one there. But anytime hardware passes through a splitter, you got to be careful. If you ended up grinding the heads off of whatever hardware holds that side plate on, or I've seen people do it to splitter rods where they come down and they grind the head off. You can see we do a hard point that's recessed in, so that won't happen. But I've seen people grind the heads off of splitter rods, and then the splitter just breaks off. And touch on that is kind of why I developed the, I call them our MagRide coilover conversion kits. I've done a video on this recently, but you can see I have a 2.5-inch coilover spring with, so what we do is we manufacture a top perch and a lower perch to allow the use of any rate spring. So this is a 400-pound spring, coupled with the ability to, I could shim this spring up, you know, so stiffer spring, as well as being able to adjust ride height to some degree, you know, could help splitter scraping. Anytime you get into like splitters, keeping that splitter as low to the ground as possible without, you know, destroying itself is kind of where you want to be. You know, so that's kind of what sent me down that road of developing those kits as well. So anyways, we're going to go ahead and get those installed, and kind of just wrap up a few other odds and ends. Quick little tip: whenever drilling carbon fiber, if you can hold a vacuum nozzle right next to the drill bit while you're drilling, you'll end up catching a lot of that dust, because carbon fiber dust is extremely itchy, obviously not good to breathe. So catching it right as you're drilling it, you know, is a good option as well. All right, so side plates are on, and everything on the front's looking good. At this point, I forget what I said in the beginning of the video. Last thing I did was I took the passenger seat out. Now, turning this into pretty much a track car with a race seat in it. No sense really having a passenger seat, at least for the time being. I might eventually put something in, give people ride-alongs or something, but at the moment, I'm just going to take that seat out. I'm going to try and sell those GT350 Recaros, but I'll post those somewhere else. Funny thing about the seats, you don't save as much weight as you would really think. Let's see, I got a bunch of chicken scratch here, but OEM seat was 49 pounds. Race seat is 18.5. For ease of install, I got brackets made for this chassis, and then the side mounts were another 5.6. So bear with me here. These two right here is the 16.8. So the seat plus the side mounts and the slide and the bracket and everything, 35.3 pounds. So 49, the factory seat minus that 35, we're really only saving 14 pounds going to a race seat. But primarily what I want is something that can just kind of like hold me a lot better. Being in a race seat with an actual harness and everything, you can just kind of feel what the car's doing a lot better. That'll just be a good step in me just getting more comfortable in this car and just being able to push it a little bit harder. So anyway, so seat's done. The passenger seat is actually about 4 pounds lighter than the driver's seat, because I guess there's a few more little things going on in the driver's seat. So you would only end up really saving about like 10 pounds. So it's really not anything too crazy. But since I just removed it, I'm kind of saving all of that 45 pounds. So yeah, I think that's where we're going to kind of wrap this one up. Bunch of little odds and ends. Only thing I really have to do before my next track day, I'm going to do a corner balance and alignment now that I have our coilover conversion kits on it. And I made myself my own set of sway bar end links. And I think that's about it. I picked up a spare alternator because the last time I was at the track, I was getting that overcharge issue. A handful of people I chatted with had the same exact thing, where if it overcharges, it cuts off the power steering, which seems extremely unsafe. Fortunately, it happened on my outlap, but then it kind of kicked back on, and I still don't really know what was going on. But anyway, so I know there was a bunch of just odds and ends in this video. I hope you learned something. Hope you kind of enjoyed it, or at least a little bit entertained. So, as always, thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you in the next one.